Today we're talking about another DIY pedal build, and this one is the Meat Factory. This one's based on the Zvex Fuzz Factory, and let me tell you, it's a wild and wacky fuzz. It may not be everyone's cup of tea, but it can do a lot of weird sounds, which I'm into. I got this kit from Das Music Ding in Germany, and it ran me somewhere around $50 for the whole thing with the enclosure pre-drilled. It was fairly easy to assemble, though it is a fair bit of wiring compared to some. It's a very simple fuzz circuit, but there is 5 pots, so a little more wiring than some pedals. You can, of course, buy the actual Zvex Fuzz Factory and save yourself the trouble if you like the sounds it makes. So first I've got a full mix demo with the Meat Factory on the guitar and bass and a lead tone, so 3 different tones, and it sounds pretty wicked. And then I'm going to do some guitar playthroughs, fiddle with the knobs, show you what it can do. And lastly, I've got a build and paint segment that I'm just going to stick in this video, so maybe a bit long, but you can jump around to whatever you're interested in. While this pedal can do some typical fuzz tones and is sort of a tone bender circuit at its heart, I believe, it is obviously heavily modified and a bit bizarre. It's very interactive, and so all the knobs really change how the other knobs function in that position. So there's a lot of going back and forth. It's not the kind of pedal if you just want a really easy, simple fuzz. This one is more for the experimental people. It's very cool if you're into making noise music or you want something to really play with the knobs, because it's almost its own instrument when you get down to playing with the knobs. But as for just creating basic fuzz sounds, yes it does, but it also does way more than that, and you may like it, you may not. It's also not the most predictable. It's a little fiddly to dial in. If you were to bump the knobs, it could send it into a screeching feedback, which, again, you might like. It may be just what you want. It may not. I don't know what kind of music you play, so it all depends. This pedal has 5 knobs, and I have given them funny names, so I'll tell you what they actually do. So first up is loud. That's just your volume. Next is chop. That is a noise gate, and it's not a super precise modern noise gate with all the bells and whistles, but it does work, and it can also make some really weird sounds in combination with the other knobs, and you'll see what I mean. Next is pack. That is a compressor. It's just a one knob. There's no settings on it, and I don't really know exactly how it works, but that is what it is on the original pedal. Next is grind, and that is the fuzz or distortion control. It adds gain to your signal. Stab is just called stab on the original pedal, and apparently it is like a bias control, basically. Glitchy, gatey type sounds. Also, we have a noise gate there too, which can also do similar things. But a noise gate and a bias control aren't the same. A bias control will change the gain structure. It changes the voltage that goes into the circuit, as does the compressor, I think. So it's a souped up, super modified fuzz face or tone bender style pedal with a lot of extra features and controls, and it does weird things. So let's hear some weird things. So besides the Meat Factory, I have the Crown from Audio Assault as my clean amp and cab sim. Now, this pedal, I can't just set everything to noon, and I'll show you why. And I will also warn you that there's a lot of screeching weird sounds that come out of this thing. So if it's annoying, I'm sorry. But that is part of the point of the pedal. So here's just sort of a relatively normal tone. Let's play around with the gain range on this. We're starting to hear a little bit of that choppy, gatey sound, so let's try to see if we can work that out. So as we can see, the noise gate on this, it is an unusual noise gate. It doesn't just bypass itself when it's above the threshold. It makes weird noises and it makes pitches. I don't really know why. Maybe someone who understands the electronics can tell me, but let's just see how the noise gate works here. Now, when it's set up at the right level, it does work pretty much just like a regular noise gate, but below that, it makes cool sounds. Enjoyable, if a little unusual. Also, if I start to turn up the noise gate too high, it starts to change the tone and actually kind of suck away some of the highs. So you want to set it just above that kind of highest note. Next up, let's see what the stab control does. You'll also notice it's pretty scratchy sounding. That's normal for bias controls. Nothing to be afraid of. Every pedal I have with a bias control, that pot always sounds scratchy, but it's not a problem with the pot. It's just how bias controls work. Now, I've seen pedals with bias controls that go both ways. This sounds like it is at normal bias or close to it when it's pretty high up, if not all the way up. And that should be like if you had a fresh battery in your pedal. On these old fuzz pedals, as the battery drained, it would have voltage sag and it would create that underbias sound. And so in this case, turning it all the way down is not less underbiasing, it's more. It's all the way underbiased, and turning it up is normal. So if you want more gain and a more typical controllable fuzz sound, you're going to want that stab control up pretty high. I also have the Keeley Fuzz Bender. Really like that pedal. That bias control is wired in reverse, so when it's all the way down, it's normal, and as you increase that bias knob, it underbiases it. But this one and another one I built, the bias control is in the opposite direction, so just something to note. I'm going to turn down the fuzz a little bit, and we're going to play with the compressor. So at its extreme range, the compressor is also giving it an underbiased sound. So let's play around a little bit with the compressor and the bias control and see how those interact. It sounds to me like a 8-bit synth, like an old Nintendo that's been thrown down a stairwell and sitting gathering dust for 20 years. It's a little bit broken. It's a little dirty and messy. It's not a pure square wave type thing, but because that's what Fuzz does, it sort of turns stuff into square waves in different ways. It definitely gets that old kind of 8-bit synth sound, that square wave synth sound, which is cool. At the same time, it's pretty messy and disgusting. So maybe useful, maybe not. I think it's a pretty sweet sound for leads, especially if you want something kind of like a retro synth without actually having a retro synth. Maybe you don't play the keyboard. I don't know. I don't know about you, but I think that's pretty cool. And it sure does a lot of sounds, so lives up to the factory name. There's a lot of things you can do with it. However, it is finicky, and it's not something you want to slap on every recording because it's a very strong flavor that may be just the ingredient you need and may not be. And it may destroy your palate with how spicy it is, because it is very spicy. But it is awesome. It's certainly versatile. It's certainly a lot of fun to just play with, and it seems like everywhere you set the knobs, it's a little bit hard to know where I am, even knowing what the knobs do. It's like the interactions, you can just kind of branch out and explore, and there's a lot of different tonal possibilities in there and some cool sounds, but it definitely does the glitchy, broken thing very well, and somewhat unavoidably. Again, I think if you want just a standard kind of clean and normal fuzz, if something like that exists, this is not it. This is going to get you into the weird territory, but it's a lot of fun, and it's a good contrast to something like a Big Muff that's a little more easy to control, a lot more predictable, and, you know, not maybe as interesting or as fun. It's also good for just making sounds and playing with it on its own. You could run like a sine wave into it and just kind of play it as its own instrument in a way. So I think it's an awesome pedal. It's a pretty easy building project. The circuit itself, as you'll see in the next segment, is not too big. It's a relatively easy sort of beginner project, except that it has a fair bit of wiring. So if you've done some guitar electronics, you've replaced pots and stuff, it's really no harder than that. You just have to fit it all into the enclosure. I definitely would put it all together, wire it all up before you put it in. Don't install the pots and then wire them in the enclosure. That would be not too fun. But anyways, it's a fun project, and it's not too expensive if you want to build a cool fuzz. I think go for it. I like the pedal, and I'd recommend it, though it is certainly a use case thing. Like, if you're into that sound, and you would actually use it. I think the demo came out cool. I was able to get some vintage doomy stuff, which is just what I like to do with fuzz. But it definitely has some of those little bits of broken sounds in there, and I didn't push it as hard as I could have to make it super weird, but it's weird enough, I think, and I think it's... I enjoy how it came out. I think it's fun, so go pick yourself up a Fuzz Factory, or build one, or don't, and just enjoy the sounds. So next up is the build and the painting. I got this kit from Das Musikding in Germany, and it ran me somewhere around $50. The shipping is a little more if you're in the States, but the euro is right on par with the dollar right now, so not a bad time to be buying things from Europe. The resistors are all individually labeled, which is nice because reading the resistance band colors is a bit tricky. The components all seem to be of high quality as far as I can tell. This has some germanium transistors. The circuit in this pedal is pretty small and quick to put together. It is a modified fuzz face or tone bender style pedal. I also want to shout out these helping hands. It makes everything so much easier, and I really should have bought some a long time ago. I had a small, one of those little $5 ones that is pretty terrible, but a nice proper table like this makes the work much, much easier, especially when you're doing any kind of wiring and you need to hold things. I'll put a link to that in the description. It was about $50. The spiky things at the bottom are for holding up your circuit board, and that also comes in handy. So I definitely recommend something like this if you're going to be doing a lot of electronics work. I also got a fume extractor. You can see there the fan. A little on the noisy side, but it was pretty cheap, and it just keeps me from breathing in all the solder smoke, which is probably not good for me. I also finally got a proper solder station before this build, and it wasn't too expensive, but it heats up really quickly, and it has a menu with different settings and features, and quite a bit of an improvement over my last cheapo temperature-controlled soldering iron. Here is the bill of materials for the kit. You can see everything is labeled with what the part is and where it goes in the circuit, and all the resistors here you can see are labeled, and the diodes have positive and negative markings. Here I am just installing all the resistors. It's a simple task, of course. You find the right one, you put it in the right spot, and bend the leads out at the bottom so that they stick in when you turn the board over to solder it and nothing falls out on you. The resistors are not polarized, so they can go in whichever direction you want until you get to the diodes, which we will see in a moment. Those are polarized and they do have a band on one side. You need to put them in the right polarity, otherwise they won't sound right. For soldering, you want a hot iron so that you can just hold it on the pad for a second and flow the solder into it. It's easier to do this with a higher temperature iron than a lower temperature, so long as you're not going so hot that you're going to burn things out. Once you have everything soldered in, you can trim off the leads, and then it's a good idea to check continuity everywhere just to make sure that everything is connected properly and you don't have to troubleshoot it later. Here are the sockets for the transistors, and these get soldered in, but then once they're in, the transistors don't need to be soldered in. You can just press them in, and if you did want to play around with different transistors later on down the road, you can do that fairly easy. It's simple to swap them out without soldering again. Now we have the sockets in, and we can move on to installing the electrolytic capacitors. Here I have the electrolytic capacitors already installed. These are also polarized, so again, check the negative side with the white band goes to the negative terminal, and you're good to go. For trimming the leads, you can use flush cutters, or if you don't have any, I'm just using my nail clippers here, and those do the job just fine. Now I have all the components done on the board. That was pretty quick, and I'm going to install the input and output jacks. Again, these helping hands make work like this much easier, because trying to do these on a table while you're holding the wires and a soldering iron can get a little dicey. Here's the ground and the output wires going in, and here I am soldering in the controls. Definitely refer to the wiring diagram for this, and just make sure you have all the wires in the right place. Anytime you have two wires, you want to twist them together before you solder them. I forgot to do that in a few places, and it's a pain to have to desolder it and resolder it again with the correct wires. Moving on to the painting, I start with a matte black spray paint, and I do sand it lightly over the top and between coats to make sure it has a smooth finish, because these acrylic paint pens I use tend to splatter a little bit. You'll end up with a cleaner look in the end if you do a little bit of light sanding without destroying your paint job. For the lettering, in this case, I'm doing the shadow part of the text in red, which goes under the white final letters, so that's why the words look a little funny. It makes it neater and saves me from going back a second time on the text afterwards, which, with these paint pens, can be a little messy if you don't nail it the first time. I did sketch out this design in Illustrator first just to get a feel for the layout and placement of everything. I'm doing this big, mad cow here. He's not happy that he's being slaughtered in this meat factory, but that's his role in this world as a cow, so that's just something he's going to have to live with. I did have a printout of a cow head, a photograph that I could sort of refer back to while drawing this, so it's, as you can see, highly anatomically accurate and much like a professional artistic rendering. Here I've done the final text in white for the pedal name, and my handwriting is not the most beautiful in the world, but this isn't the most beautiful sounding pedal, so I feel like it adds to the grungy aesthetic. Here I am working on the blood splat, and this is a really important part in any pedal design. You want to add blood features because it'll make your pedal sound more brutal, and it really sells it to the audience that this is a bloody meat tone, and that is, I think, very crucial to getting an awesome, heavy fuzz sound. Here is the cow's back and side. It wraps around the pedal, again, using principles of 3D design. Very advanced concept that you'll only get in graphic design school, so be sure to pay thousands of dollars to get a degree in design so that you can make guitar pedals. I gave this cow red eyes to symbolize that he has mad cow disease, which is a serious problem I'm trying to raise awareness for, and it also symbolizes the fact that he's mad about his life in the slaughterhouse, but the beef must flow. I did the cow horns in a nice tan color. It's a contrasting color scheme that really adds visual appeal, but besides aesthetic reasons, you'll learn if you study cow geometry that they do indeed have brown horns, and this is important to the function of the cows. We also want to add some 3D dimensionality to the blood splatters to really sell the realism of this effect. Here you can see the cow is given nostrils because I, unlike his cruel overlords at the factory, want this cow to breathe. I also used the tan for his little cow lip because, again, that's one of the main functional points of being a bovine animal. Having a base coat in black really helps with the black and white color scheme of the cow. It means I don't have to use as much black ink to produce the cow look. Again, exquisite attention to detail is important when doing the sides of the cow because a cow should not be a two-dimensional object, but a fully 3D, lifelike animal feature. A lot of people don't know this, but cows actually have black spots on them, and I think this is an evolutionary adaptation to help them blend in with the zebra population and make them less appealing to predators. We have a very large zebra population here in North America, so it's an important thing for them on a biological level to help them survive in the wild. Pay close attention to details such as eyes. They are one of the main features that human beings are drawn to when they look at another animal or person. So we really want the eyes to pop and to bring life to this design. The roof of this meat factory is hard and angular. It contrasts the soft and supple features of a cow with a sort of aggressive industrialism. And it's a statement about these clouds are made of different colors, and that makes them look better. I used tan and white and silver and black, and that really gets this dirty, gross smog feel. I don't know if meat factories produce a lot of smog, but I thought it was a feature that I wanted so you can get smoky tones and toxic pollution sounds out of this fuzz. That's what we're going for. The black really adds a weight to the underside of the clouds too. It gives them that dark, foreboding quality. And here's some more blood. You want to have blood in each corner of the petal, or at least two corners of the petal, to ground the design in what's important here. This blood's also fresh, you can tell because it's bursting. Bursting blood. I also added a red tag to the cow. I think it really complements all the other red going on here, and again sells that he is a mere product, a part of a system, much like all cows that are raised for meat purposes. In case you think I'm some kind of animal rights activist, I'm not actually on the cow's side here. This cow has mad cow disease and needs to be turned into burgers ASAP. The control text is very important so that the user knows exactly what they're doing. And that's why I chose words such as loud, chop, pat, grind, and stab, because those are easy to know controls that all guitarists will understand immediately. The button is also a beef activator. It may be true bypass, but that's not the point here. The point is that it activates the beef. Nice knobs. Once again, we're adding blood around the switch, so it's kind of like you stepped on something gross and it just spurted out blood under you. I also extended this line to further enhance the symmetry of the pedal name. Gotta make sure that blood is looking good, solid, juicy. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed my meat factory. I'd say you should go out and buy this pedal, except you can't. This one's one of a kind. But you can go check out the factory from Das Music Ding. I will drop a link in the description where you can buy this kit if you want to build one, or you could go buy a Zvex Fuzz Factory and support the designer as well. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel because it really helps me out. You can also come over to my Discord where I have free IRs and we talk about gear and stuff. So, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.